slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning rise just kick down the cobblestones. I'm feeling good
Anyway, welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Tim, and I'm glad to see everyone's here who's here. But this is the Center for Spiritual Living. We've been here 12, 13 years now, and glad that we're still here. We've got people coming and going. So coming is Bonnie. Bonnie is a practitioner from Oakland at a very dynamic church, which I've had the opportunity to be at. People leaving at the moment are Bob and Robert and Maureen. Maureen got promoted from being totally unpaid and only partially appreciated here to a real job at Carlsbad Church, and plus it's in her home grounds, so there's a lot going for it. It's probably one of the richest, both in terms of money and in terms of the practice and teaching of science and mind. So comings and goings and new things. We're trying new things. I'm going to be trying to introduce more Spanish. So that was part of our visioning, was to have better communication and sharing and have things done in such a way that it really welcomes in people who can speak English or who can speak Spanish, but be more inclusive. The other thing is, in our visioning, was that we would have live music. Ta-da! Amico and Miguel, as you've then had the chance to experience, are wonderful musicians, wonderful feeling. The emotion and the sense of life is very gentle but caressing, I would say. Tenura. It's very, very pleasant. And so we're honored that they've agreed to play here. I don't think they want to sign up for every week, but then again, we only meet every other week, and we'll see more of them. And we've got other people who are interested. So those are some of the things we're doing. Other things we're trying to do is to get a Zoom capability that will really manage us to transmit this service. So we're here to support each of us and the community as a whole in living from our divine center within. And that's why we're here. And today, we're going to have the invocation by Reverend Maureen.
Today I'd like to read first from the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes, and I want to talk about peace. Tim was talking about going within so you don't go without, and talking about, again, being centered, going to that center in each of us where peace abides. And I think because of what's going on in the world right now with Ukraine and Russia, I think a lot of us need to go back into our hearts, go to that place where peace, that stillness. So Ernest Holmes says, peace is a state of inner calm. He says, a realization of our oneness with omnipresence brings peace. The peace which is accompanied by the consciousness of power. He also says peace. Peace is the power at the heart of God. It is through the revelation of the self to the self that one understands life. That we approach the power which is at the heart of God. This comes through a recognition of the unity of the individual with the spirit, back of, in, and through all. So if you join me in consciousness, let's just close your eyes if you like to. Take a deep breath. And just know with me, there's only one. There's only one. Right here in this room. In us, around us, and through us. All powerful, all knowing, everywhere present. only Spirit, life, light, love, peace, power, joy. It's all good. It's all God. So I speak these words for the world. There is peace, and peace is at the center of each of us. And we go to that peace. We know this is where Spirit resides in each of us. And we know the truth of who we are, that we are Spirit expressing right here, right now. And we express love. And we include everyone in our world vision of love. We are all one with it, and we are blessed. So I know for each of us, today is a wonderful day. We come here in fellowship to explore and learn and expand our consciousness, and I give great gratitude in advance for Reverend Tim's talk, and I give great gratitude for everyone here. Thank you. I release my word. I know it is acted upon is spoken. I know it is so, and together we say, so it is.
My sweet Lord, oh my Lord, my Lord, I really want to see you, really want to be with you, really want to see you now, what takes so long, my Lord, my sweet Lord.
World that works for everyone, what would that look like? One thing I'm pretty sure is that mostly what we see now would seem to be the opposite. That is a world that works for nobody.
Yeah.
Certainly with the political discussions and the different conflicts that have risen in the United States in the last so many years, it would appear that it's not working for anybody. And that people are generally unhappy. And what do you do with that? Well, I had some grandiose ideas about maybe the things that we could need to improve, the normal things like getting housing and education and opportunities, and there are a lot of things that are sort of just housekeeping kind of things for a civilized nation. But we seem to be still having really ancient and very traditional problems. So the four horsemen of the apocalypse, how many people are familiar with what the four horsemen of the apocalypse stand for? They stand for, name one.
Famine.
Famine. Okay, so far we don't have too many famines on this continent, but in the world, yeah. So famine. What's another one?
Pestilence.
Pestilence. That would be COVID is a pestilence, as is flu, influenza, and different forms. But the one historically was the plague that plagued Europe, and people forget that the pestilence is synonymous with that. But many types of infectious diseases have been a major source of suffering in the world. So famine, pestilence, war. You'd think we were done with that, no? That was the idea, kind of, when I was growing up. Well, we had a Cold War, which was actually, as I think back on it, fairly destructive. I can remember being instructed when the rockets come that you get under your desk And even as a 6-year-old, I didn't have too much confidence in that strategy, that would really help. And I had no idea, because I was in the middle of Montana, that I was at any risk. Turns out we had a string of Minuteman missile sites around my town that we were vaguely aware of, because there were these Air Force guys that were in town, and a lot of girls had hots for them, but we did not really see ourselves as a target. Fortunately, those sites were not targeted, or at least that war didn't happen. But here we are again. And the last one that I remember is natural disasters. Like the earthquakes in '86, that was pretty much a calamity, something that happened here, and there have been a lot of different things. The Katrina hurricane in New Orleans was, not only did those people really suffer, but the whole United States and North America kind of got the sense, we're not safe. Things can happen to us. So instead of having normal problems, like I mentioned, ones that could be easily solved, it seems like we're dealing still with catastrophes. Catastrophe? I can't even get the right how to say that in Spanish. Catastrophe. It's almost the same, so it's hard, at least hard for me to remember how it's different. And they're the same kind of things. What are we experiencing now? Well, there's our pestilence, as I mentioned, and it's better, right? Most of us see, at least I see, an end in sight. Yes, it's probably and maybe going to have recrudescences and other kinds of things happening. But we're quote through it in some ways. But being through this is a little bit like being through the Holocaust and being a survivor. It ain't done. I remember watching The Pawnbroker when I was probably 20 years old, and the guy having these PTSD, he was living basically still the experiences that he'd had in the Holocaust. And it's not the same, but there's something about having 2 years of kind of daily reminder that you could be next. That this could not only affect you and destroy you, but many people that you love, and that we are not safe. The message was we are not safe. And as we proceed to war, this is a picture of one of the bombed out cities in the Ukraine. I decided not to give pictures of some of the people who were injured, and obviously, but that's not necessary. But this gives the feeling of what it is like there, and what it must have been like in London, and what it was like in Leipzig in the time just before, during which some of us lived, and the rest of us were born just a little bit after, but with that memory. So this is a kind of malady, these catastrophes, these 4 horsemen, these things that affect a lot of people, that as so far we have not been able to prevent or do too much about. They're still with us. And what I want to talk about is how to treat ourselves. It's pretty hard to stop war and pestilence as an individual effort. Now, we can, and there are things to do, but we really need to heal ourselves and maintain our own health. Because if I can't, it's sort of like if you have an infant or something and you're on an airplane, they tell you to put on your face mask first. If we're not healthy, there's no way that we're going to be contributing to the health of the planet if we're bogged down in the suffering. But I was not a big prayer person, but this is one that I've learned that is a very powerful one. And it's not a science of mind one, although as I heard the words that Maureen spoke of what Holmes was talking about, to me this connects perfectly with it. To you it may not, so I'm going to go through it a little bit and say how I see it working. So it's in 3 parts. So the first part is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Dios, dame gracia para aceptar con serenidad las cosas que no puedo cambiar. Now that has at least three words that are interesting. One is God, and for the purpose of the discussion, it's really, I'll elaborate on it a little more, but for me, it's kind of an essence that indwells me and that permeates all of creation. And there's a term called panentheism that says that the divine is all of creation and something more, from which creation could come. Mm-hmm. So it's there's one story where the punchline is a kid who was being supported by a minister in terms of encouragement and helping him out, and the kid had to had to be honest with the guy and say, I don't believe in God. And the minister's response was, well, I don't believe in the God that you don't believe in either. And I kind of see that as a reasonable response to the people who say, well, I don't believe in God, that's a primitive kind of belief. We've gone way beyond that. But I won't get into the discussion that was held in the play that's at the Bravo Theater between Freud and C.S. Lewis. It's interesting. Anybody seen that yet? Well, one cultured person in the whole audience. There'll be more. It's entertaining, but it's not quite profound. So that part's often problematic with people that I end up interviewing with. In fact, I've had, and I'm thinking about teaching another course on recovering from religion. And I find it entertaining and amusing the amount of energy people have against their religion of origin and adopting other ones that are basically they have some often good qualities, but they're basically also religions with belief systems and blah, 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 but they aren't the ones that I felt got me.
Is your course going to include a potluck?
Yeah, well, that could be. We'll see what we can do. We'll have you bring the food. That could be another weight reduction program that we could have if we relied on Jeff to bring the food. So, the second word that's interesting is serenity. And that was referred to, serenidad, was referred to also by Holmes, and it's inner peace, and it's way outside of the reach of most of us when we're in deep suffering and low energy levels and feeling of stuckness and isolation. Has anybody been stuck and isolated and felt like crap? So that's what tends to get people in recovery programs. And that's where this prayer, although had nothing, its initiation came about by Niebuhr, I forgot the name, but about 1943. So it was in the middle of some difficult times for many people. That serenity is something that is not accessible at that level of consciousness that most of us are in when we're stuck and depressed and it feels like the world is just a mess. And Einstein pointed out that we cannot solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created it. So war comes from fear often. Our dog, Mimi, will attack huge dogs because she's afraid of them, and that's how she reacts. It's not because she's particularly brave or even violent, but she reacts that way. So fear is a big one, but it's also anger, it's wanting to have control, it's wanting to have things my way. And looking at the levels of consciousness, this is really good. I've got a pointer that still has one of these little lights on it. Isn't that exciting? Yeah. You ever kind of envied the people that were giving talks and are really good at it, which I'm not particularly, but they would be able to, well, if you see right there.
For Christmas, we'll get you one.
Yeah, anyway. Serenity is right up there. It's sort of equated in this particular chart, and this is from Hopkins, And I'm sorry that I'm not very transparent.
Better start running some more.
Yeah, I got to run some more so I can see through me instead of having to look. But it's a very high level of vibration. It's a high energy, and we can do some things from these lower levels of anger and pride and desire and fear. We can choose to do things that will improve things, but one cannot, by volition, achieve serenity. Serenity does not happen by willfulness or by desire or by intelligence. A person can be smart enough to know, boy, it would really be nice to have some of that, but that won't generate it. And that's why it's a prayer to God or the infinite or something within us that is greater than ourselves. Because of myself, I will not find the serenity. I will not find that state. And the question then comes, well, why do we need that state? We need that state because at the level of fighting wars, of conflict, of anger and hostility and depression, we are not able to generate peace. The only thing that creates peace is peace. And so that's a very Gandhian idea that he was the change he wanted to see because he was peace. He was at peace. He was not angry or upset with the quote enemy, whatever the enemy was. They weren't enemies, but he saw conditions that needed to change and could be changed, but he accepted the people. So that's why that part of the prayer is so essential and I think helpful. If I can allow myself, become receptive to being serene, and then doing the practices. Most of the teachings, and many of us have gone to and go to, hours of meditation and such. The meditation and contemplating and being within will, over years and over time, if accompanied by consistent behavior, will lead to a feeling of general serenity. Most of the time I'm actually pretty serene. Serene with some bite. Maybe not that serene. The second part is about the courage to change the things I can. And courage, I don't know if you'll recall, let's see if I can make it go back. Coraje, Valentia, is at 200. It's kind of on the edge of what the lower part is kind of level of ego or personality. And it's what we're trained and it's what humans have been doing for thousands of years. It's a normal way of being, more or less. We expect people to be this way because most of us often are, especially in difficult situations. When everything's going fine, sunny day, checks are coming in, my wife's being nice to me, people are bringing good food, it's fairly easy to feel content and happy. But when hits the fan, as in an epidemic, or when we're having the threat of World War III, it's a little different. The part that makes this difficult is not just the, let's see, now it's the serenity, yes, the courage to change the things I can. It's knowing, well, what can I change? Well, me, first of all. By being willing to become a place of peace to the best of my ability, and being caring of other people, and wanting to not be at the level of conflict and argument. And by the way, I come from a long line of arguers and debaters, and, so I find that it's one of those sports that I kind of not real eager to let go of, but see that it might not be in my best interest, let alone that of those around me. So how to become that? We can choose courage. And why does it take courage to do what obviously we need to do? To be gentle and kind and caring and loving and supporting. Mostly, it's a sense of, I believe, a kind of them and us. And that somehow I can trust, but I don't really trust. Rolf is a pretty nice guy. He speaks a good thing, but do I really trust him? Can I really trust Sophia? Do I really? In what way do I? And I think many of us, I in particular, have kind of barriers. I'm cautious. I don't want to take chances. That's where courage is important. The courage to actually imagine things that I might do or ways I could be that I haven't been, and step toward that, knowing that I won't have success. That's the other thing that is somewhat difficult, is saying, okay, I'm going to be a really, not such a ugly person, and almost certainly within 40 hours of saying that, I'll probably have some reaction where I'm really, if I were 50 years younger and 6 inches taller, where I'd be ready to slug, kind of thing. Fortunately, my size and my age has made me aware that that's never is going to be a good idea. So even though I may feel like it, I actually don't do that, but I still can be pretty ugly. So it's risky to say I'm going to live according to this higher self and be present as a messenger of peace and caring and understanding. It's scary. It's not how most of us have spent most of our lives. So it does take courage. It takes willingness to be a fool or be seen as, whatever, weak or inadequate or themmed in some way or another. If you haven't been themmed, you haven't been talking to enough people. Because most of us harbor beliefs and ways of seeing things that at least 2/3 of the rest of the population do not share and often find offensive, right? So if I show up as who I really am, there are people that are probably going to not, quote, like me. God forbid that they don't like me. How many of you have, I need approval and to be liked to be okay? So that's kind of what, it takes some courage to let go, one, to even recognize that it was there. I would, if you'd asked me that when I was 30, I'd say, I'm a very independent person. Dun, dun, dun. I told you there was a problem with little songs coming through that I have no idea where they came from. That seems like Gilbert and Sullivan kind of song. But in any case, that's the second step of all this, is to actually do things, which is changing me by how I behave. Because as I behave, I will become. In 12-step, they say, fake it till you make it. So it's not because I feel in the mood to go up to somebody and say, hello, and how are you? For me, that can be challenging at times. But because as I do that more and more, it becomes easier and I become more connected with people. So I break down some of the separation that I feel because of the way I evolved as a younger person. So that is why this is such a critical part of it. I can change how I am, how I relate, and I can act better even when I don't necessarily feel better. I can fake it till I make it. Oh, I found this one and I liked it because it was upside down from the point of view where they shot the arrow, and this is in Spanish. And they translated coraje, or courage, as coraje, which sounds almost the same as courage. And I think the other word is valentia. There's some other words for that I've seen as translations of courage into Spanish. So I was hoping to get a Spanish lesson, but I'll wait till later for feedback on what words would be the best. But that is the movement over the next bump. and the one that I always like today, and the wisdom to know the difference, that which I can change and I can't change. Now, a simple answer to what I can't change is basically I can't change much of anything. I can't really change my past, that's past. In the present, I might respond a little differently, but it's pretty hard to instantaneously plan, develop a strategy, and act differently in the moment and be in the moment. And so it's a little hard to change in the moment, and the future isn't there. So I can't do anything about that now, really, in some ways. So at one level, certainly I am powerless. I have little control over that which I see as being outside of me, and I don't have a whole lot of control with a lot of things that go on within me. At least it feels that way. So the first answer to this is the wisdom would be not much. But the more profound and challenging realization is that I can change everything. How do I change the past? By what I interpreted as meaning. The past has no meaning intrinsically in it. What beliefs I had about them, about myself as a child, about myself as a somewhat unattractive drunk person in the 20s and 30s, and definitely totally self-involved. I have stories about what that was about, but I can change that story. And as I change that story, how I am now changes. And how I am now, as that changes, then the future that is mine to experience starts to change. Being with, how many people are here? 30 people, about a third of whom I knew before, and 2/3 that I haven't yet gotten to know, would have been impossible for me 30 years ago. That just didn't happen. Why? It wasn't because the people of the universe changed, but my willingness to interact and participate and see in other people, wow, I want to get to know that person. I wonder what they've been through. How are they doing? So the fact is that the wisdom is that we can change everything. Now, do I believe that if I pray intensely, that Putin will go away because I prayed intensely? I don't think so. There are a few of you who know the answer, because you probably, like me, have already tried that and it hasn't worked so far. So it isn't about kind of a magical, if I have enough faith, they will change. It is about, if I have enough faith, I will change. And the way I see it and experience it, and will open up a lot of possibilities. I mean, it's real clear that we can feed all the people on earth. It's real clear that we can educate every child. We have that potential as a species. We can take care of each other. Knowing that we can do that that is possible, makes it possible. As long as we believe that we're destined to more war and destruction because that's what we've always done, will lead to more war and destruction and poverty and discrimination and all the things that make this a world that doesn't work for anyone. So this is a concept that I like. David Hawkins, and it's by no means new, but I keep rediscovering it, or people keep pointing it out to me. And that is distinguishing between I call it the egoic self, but the part of me that is survival oriented. And it could be survival, how do I avoid bullets and that kind of survival, but it also could be, how do I avoid feeling embarrassed or feeling rejected? So some of the fears that come at that level, where it's a concern about safety and a feeling that if in order to have enough, I've got to get enough, that grasping and wanting control, and they won't do what I want them to do unless I manipulate them or encourage them or somehow overcome them, any resistance with either my brilliance or my charm or my good looks, which are, as time goes on, seem to be decreasingly in supply. But nevertheless, that's the egoic self on a survival program, and it also has a hormonal nervous system component. So it's a sympathetic nervous system that was designed as a fight or flight, what to do in the moments of stress, to get up the energy and run fast and fight, but as a persistent, predominant force in our bodies, basically makes us sick, depressed, we lose energy, so it doesn't work. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, pretty much corresponding to the levels of consciousness that I presented the charts on, the higher levels of consciousness tend to be ones that are from the parasympathetic system. And these are correspondences. It's not that, it's if I am happy, and I am productive, and I'm relating to people, and I'm feeling well, and I'm creative, I will have a much more active parasympathetic nervous system. So that's not, and there are physical things such as meditation, as a prime example, but also for me, running, doing activities that I like, hearing or playing music. Now, my playing music is probably something that should be kept to myself, but some people play music in a way that is soothing to others as well as to themselves. But those things, doing those things, bring peace and joy, and that's empowerment, because the empowerment, as an egoic self, I have very little power. But as an expression of that divine energy that is within me, wow, things happen. And it don't happen because of me individually. It's always us. We create our universe. I don't. We do. And it is a we thing. And it only happens as, at least among humans, as that's the thing that creates further, richer, deeper things. And the influence of other people around me changes me. I look at them and I hear what they've gone through, and I experience what they're feeling sometimes, and I say, oh, wow. You know, I've been part of that problem in my ignorance sometimes, and sometimes in just my self-centeredness. And I can choose again. And we can create something different. So I like this little diagram because it's at a level that I can more or less understand. There's some really elegant descriptions of this phenomena, that there is a higher self and that there are qualities that we can express that baffle me. How do I do that? This seemed to help me. So I'll end with this. And there are other purpose statements and things, but this is probably the fundamental one of human beings, and certainly in times of difficulty, catastrophes. And what Albert said was, Albert Schweitzer, I'm always on first name basis with people that I admire greatly and who especially aren't here to tell me that's kind of inappropriate. I'm your elder, and clearly I'm much more advanced being than you are. But Albert said, the purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. Or as the Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. Or as Gandhi said, my life is my teaching. And his life is about peace, being peace. So, can we make a world that works for everyone? Of course we can. And we are. each of us, as we participate in this life and involve ourselves and dedicate ourselves in our own way, make huge differences. There are people here who I know who have been involved in philanthropic things that are like amazing. We've carried something like 35 dogs to the Northwest in our Bon Voyage kind of part of the program, which talked to Arlene afterward. I wasn't real eager the first time she announced that we were doing this. But I came to say, or came to feel, yeah, that's really pretty neat to see these dogs having a better chance, and also the people who receive them, they have a feeling of being more fulfilled and fulfilling a mission in their life, as well as the people that help to organize to send them. So it's something that the community does. So with that, I'll end with the why. People say, why are you here? So this is the view I get whenever I go on my walks, looking out over the lake and looking out on seeing the village and the steeple of the church, and feeling grateful that life is such a rich, wonderful experience, that there is so much here. And even as I face, what do they call it, the final act. Fortunately, we have people here who have been in the final act for quite a while, so I'm not worried about immediately taking my
Encore.
But being in the final act and knowing that there's, I'm probably not going to start any major business in the next, or discover any amazing cure in that sense of being, quote, a success. But to be part of something, this community, part of what we are about, is like, wow, that's amazing. So I leave you with that wish that if you want to participate here more, tell me. We have courses, we have things we're doing, we'll announce those in the end. And now, I think, this is one of my favorite parts. The next part is about gratitude.
Give us a chance to applaud you.
Oh, yes, please applaud. Now we've got Steve down is doing but he's passed the basket. And now the man who's going to pass the basket is Arch Craven.
person. It's really important to remember that we're one. And we, at this particular group of people, we truly believe that. And we hold the gifts and offerings that you've given us today as a perfect gift of your love for us. And we extend it back to you. And blessings to you and your families. Thank you.
And so it is.
So we're now going to allow ourselves to relax a little bit, and I could tell you a little bit of a joke after a fashion too about Tim's talk, maybe, that in the Serenity Prayer, I have a little twist on the Serenity Prayer, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. And I think that was part of the theme of Tim's talk today, that we are healing ourselves in order to be able to assist in the healing of others, assist in the planet's healing. So we just connect up right now with this Spirit of the living God that lives and moves and has its being through us. Knowing that as we are ending today and grateful for the opportunity to be together and to hear this information that Tim has shared with us, we allow ourselves to be that atmosphere of peace, to be the compassion, the service, and the willingness to help others that he talked about from Albert Schweitzer. And I declare that this is who we are, how we are, and where we are in this moment as we break up and go into our communion and communing. We are allowing ourselves to be that spiritual being that we know resides in each and every one of us and each and every person and sentient being on the planet. And we know that we are doing our part by moving inward to discover the wisdom that it is me, that it is you, to be changed in order to be the change we want to see in the world. And as we move into the next phase here, we know we are guided, guarded, and protected by that living spirit of God, the universe, Brahma, whatever you choose to call that great eternity that we are a part of. And so it is. Amen.
There be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
You're welcome to stand.
Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be.